All right, what's up, guys? This is Chapter 7, Management 386, Organizational Behavior. This is kind of a fun one for me because this is a chapter that's in a lot of management textbooks, and it was not when I started out anyway in 2004. And that's because I got to be a part in inventing it. So that was pretty cool. Basically, I was at Nebraska doing my PhD, working with a guy there, Fred Luthans, who was psychology trained, but he was in a business school. And in 2003, the year before I got there, he just wrote a little paper called Positive Organizational Behavior. And when I got there, I was put to work on all the statistics and the research for what you'll see today in terms of PsyCap. So it's kind of fun. I may or may not have cited myself once in here, just for kicks and giggles. The history is... Well, I guess the short version of the story is forever psychology was focused on what's wrong with people. Basically taking broken people and then how do we fix them, right? It's, personality disorders, sociopath, psychopath, schizophrenia, PTSD, whatever it was. A ton of money gets put into it after World Wars I and II because they're like, hey, something's wrong. This guy just saw his buddy get blown in half and now he can't sleep and he's suicidal. Let's figure out what happened to the brain. So that was the focus until 1998. This guy named Martin Seligman, basically says, hey, we're losing out. We're not, our discipline, psychology, is not helping a big chunk of the population. That is, rather than taking people from maladaptive to adaptive, let's take them from adaptive or functioning to flourishing. So this is sort of like psychology. Oh, I got a bug in here. Sort of like psychology for everybody, not just people who have disorders. So it took off from there. There was you can see the stats here, 17-to-1 ratio in terms of what's wrong with people versus what's right with people. And it got popular. Seligman took off with it. Barbara Fredrickson focuses on positive emotions. There's a positivity class at Harvard. This guy, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar. And it was the most popular class in Harvard for a long time because the idea is sort of how to be happy. So is there some fluff in the field? There is, and it's unfortunate because there's also some really good science in the field. So people joke about, the power of positive thinking. Yeah, it actually is very scientific, it's very valid, and predicts a lot of really cool things if you know how to manage it. So that's what we'll focus on a little bit here. In organizational behavior or in management, we're going to look at these things mainly today. So self-efficacy, optimism, hope, and resilience, those combined make what's called positive psychological capital, or PsyCap. So PsyCap, it's on your final exam too. PsyCap really has 4 components. Those are the 4: self-efficacy, optimism, hope, and resilience. We'll talk a little bit about subjective well-being, which is just kind of happiness, how we think about it. And a little bit about EI, but the science on emotional intelligence is sort of mixed. It's popular, it's cool, but just trying to be scientifically driven in the course, there's mixed results so far. So let's jump into it. Self-efficacy. This thing is friggin' awesome. Self-efficacy is your belief that you can successfully do something, right? It's task-specific. There's generalized self-efficacy, like I think I'm a smart, competent person, or I think I'm good at sports, and I've never played badminton, but I'm pretty sure I'm good at that too, right? So that's kind of domain-specific or more generalized maybe. But in its purest sense, self-efficacy is, do you believe you can hit a baseball? Do you believe you can dig a hole? Do you believe you can do a calculus math problem? Something like that. So it's very task-specific. And we find out that if people do believe those things, if they are higher in self-efficacy, they tend to persevere a lot more when there's setbacks. It's like, no, like shooting a 3-point basketball shot and you miss it. You're like, no, give me the ball. I'm going to shoot it because I know I can make this. If you don't have self-efficacy, you don't even shoot the shot in the first place. And if you're low in self-efficacy, you certainly don't shoot it after you've missed. So if we can get people to believe they can be or will be or are successful in any particular task at work, the chances are that they will persevere harder when there are failures. They'll try harder, which ultimately leads to better performance. Think about the circle now. Now that I've achieved better performance, that comes back in and that makes me believe even more so, yes, I am good at this. Yes, I can do this. So we try to enhance that wherever we can. And it affects what people do, the effort. I mean, just like if you're standing here watching this screen, and I said, go ahead and raise your hand, and maybe you go like this, you wouldn't even think about it. Well, because you believe that you can raise your hand. But if I said, go ahead and just fly up to the ceiling where you are, you go, haha. Clearly he's not being serious because I can't fly. Well, you don't believe you can fly, so you're not even going to attempt. The idea is if you can get someone to believe they will be successful, they will at least attempt it and find out. So, very important construct in overall psychological capital. There's a few ways to develop it. Remember, it is just getting them to believe they can. One of them is by actually mastering the task. So if you give me a math problem and I solve it, and I've never seen it before and I solve it, now I believe that I can solve it because I did. Right? So we want to get people, this is like when you hire people 30, 60, 90 days, you want to get them some really like low-hanging fruit, good successes right off the bat. Give them things that you're confident they can do and then start a little bit more challenging, We want to get them to be confident right when they're starting out. Another one is modeling. If you say, James, can you lift that weight, that bench press right there? And I go, I don't know. And then I'm not sure if I can do it. And if you get someone built about like me, about my size, and they sit down and they do it, I go, oh, okay. Yeah, I think I can probably do it. If you put a 8-year-old little girl in there and she does it, I'll be like, okay, yes, I can definitely do it. But if you put a bodybuilder in there and they lift the weights, that doesn't help me. That doesn't make me go, oh, well, they can do it, I can do it. No. So the modeling is really helpful, which is why we do like on-the-job training. We establish mentorships, all that kind of stuff. But it's limited to how close the model is to the person you're trying to influence. Another one is social persuasion. This is you can look into it if you want. Pygmalion effect, Galatea effect. This is where we encourage people. I believe in you. You can do this. Good job after they've done it. Something like that. And that's the purpose of that is to, again, enhance self-efficacy. There's a little bit of emotional or psychological arousal that'll help. Think of a scenario. One of my favorite movies. I just lost one of my favorite movies. Holy smokes. That's horrible. I can see it. Denzel Washington, football team. It's not Friday Night Lights. This is ridiculous. Segregated school. They desegregate. I can't remember the Titans. Wow, that was embarrassing. Anyway, so football team, remember the Titans, and they're losing, and of course they're down and down in the dumps emotionally. Coach comes in and gives this rousing speech, and they all run screaming out of the huddle. Yeah. So their efficacy was enhanced, right? Their energy is going to be more. Now that's going to be short-lived, but that's the fourth and final way, probably the least effective way of enhancing self-efficacy. Science, maybe my last slide on it. The science here is overwhelmingly clear. It's got a meta-analytic correlation, which is basically like every study on self-efficacy, crunch into one study. What do we know? Disattenuate for unreliability and deal with measurement error. 0.38 correlation between self-efficacy and work-related performance. In other words, statistically significant meta-analysis. If somebody's confident they can do something, they're going to do better at it across the board. Okay, optimism. Let's talk about optimism. Optimism is not just like, oh, gee, I think everything will work out in the face of pending doom. It's a bit more scientific than that. It has to do with what's called attribution. We talked about perception and attribution earlier. Attribution is like how you explain things that happened. Okay, So first couple videos that we made in this class, I was having a darn time figuring out how to get the alignment right, it's a different screen and camera and all that stuff. What was my attribution? I guess you just heard it. But if I were to explain that by saying the reason why those videos sucked is because I'm dumb, I don't understand technology, I'm a bad professor. Well, those are internal, they're stable, and they're global, right? I can't teach anything. I'll never figure it out. It's all my fault, right? That would be a pessimist. The opposite of that would be an optimist. Sort of like what I said. It was a new screen, a new monitor. I can get it fixed. I've done it before. I'll do better in the next class or in the next video, and it won't affect any of my other classes. It wasn't my fault. It was the new camera. It wasn't my fault. It was a new screen. It's not that I'm not owning mistakes. It's that I'm not making those mistakes global and permanent, right, and generalized, meaning no matter what I do, I'm going to fail. Ultimately, that leads to learned helplessness. So optimists, let's go here. Optimists believe failures and problems, any bad events, they're just temporary, right? Pessimists are like, no, like that's who I am. That's how it's always going to be. So our job as managers is to correct and deal with the attribution. If someone is a pessimist over time, ultimately it will lead to this idea of learned helplessness. No matter what I'm going to fail. So we as managers sit down after a failure or after a success, either one, with our employees, and we go, okay, like you just crushed it with that contract, right? You sold a big product, whatever. How did it happen? Like, what's your explanation? How did you have success? And if they say, I got lucky, or if they say, oh, that customer just liked me. No, you change the attribution. If there's a success, it needs to be because I worked hard, I did the homework. We want it to be more global to other things, more personal, like that's my success, I'm going to own it, because that will enhance their psychological capital moving forward, right? If they have a setback, right, and there's some kind of a failure, and they begin to go, it's my fault, it'll always be that way. You ask them why, listen to this is the science piece, like listen to their attribution, and then correct it. No, man, it was just bad timing. Yeah, we could have done a little bit more here on our side. You could have done a little bit more, but it was bad timing, or it was a fluke in the economy, or like you're not going to own all this failure. That's how we deal with. That's how we tweak attributions to make people, and hopefully, no pun intended there, more optimistic. Hope. I'll try to go over this the next two a little bit more quickly, just for the sake of time here. And this can drag on, but hope is not like pie in the sky. Like, gee, I hope it'll work out. Hope has two fundamental components. One of them is pathways thinking. One of them is agentic thinking. Agentic just means like agency, so kind of motivation to operate on your environment. Give you the simplest analogy of hope. So I'm in Ellensburg, Washington. There's a mountain pass between where I'm at and Seattle. So if I want to go to Seattle and they're doing road construction on Interstate 90, so it's blocked, how do I get to Seattle? Well, I suppose I can take the back roads with my truck. Okay, back roads is a forest fire, can't go. Now how do you get to Seattle? Well, I can go over Highway 2, or I can go down through Toppenish, or I can go down through Tri-Cities and take 84 up, or I can get a hot air balloon, or I can get a canoe, or I can ride a horse, or I can... That's pathways thinking. I can come up with one more method to try to get to my goal. As soon as I say, I don't know anymore. The hot air balloon didn't work. The dog sled didn't work. I don't know how to get to Seattle anymore. I'm out of ideas. Now you're hopeless. So hope is about seeing a pathway to get to your goal, right? So a lot of times when you're sitting down on a big project, it's helpful to anticipate obstacles. So we sit down with our employees and go, here's your project plan, here's your sequence. What happens if step 2 doesn't work? Well, what do you mean? What happens? Like you have some kind of setback, or you run out of funding, or you're behind schedule. What will you do then? It's helpful to go through this exercise of basically having backup plans. That is, those are your pathways. If you don't have any more pathways, then there's no place to operate on your environment. There's no next step to take. At that point, we call that hopeless. So a big part of developing hope in our employees is getting them to do what's called pathways thinking. Model it out, each little step along the way, anticipate obstacles, and then what if that doesn't work? So you have backup plans. So when you run into an obstacle, it's not like, oh, we don't know what to do now. No, we already thought through this, right? We have other pathways. That's hope. Hope is fun. Resilience. Some people say resilience, resiliency, whatever. Resilience is unique amongst these four, right? So the other three of them, optimism, hope, and self-efficacy, are about operating on your environment, doing something. Resilience, you can't be resilient to nothing. So you don't go out there and be resilient. Resilience is reactive, right? So something happens, and how you react to it is where you'll see the effects of resilience. The ability to bounce back to what we call homeostasis, like normal levels. Some people bounce back even stronger. I had a dog that died when I was a kid. I love that dog. I bounced back, right? It was okay. We got another dog. My dad died when I was 20. There's no quick bounce back from that one, right? I think over time, grieving, processing, I think I bounced back, at least emotionally, stronger. Experience loss, experience grief. You have some of those mechanisms now for like coping mechanisms. So that would be resilience. Some scenarios where you have like a nasty divorce or child abuse or some kind of trauma, something like that. People get beat down with that trauma and they never bounce back. So a lot of that therapeutic work at that point has to do with trying to establish some resilience. There's some other words that get mixed in here: resilience, hardiness, grit, right? Stuff like that. But the key one is this idea of resilience, which is also developable, obviously. So if you take those four and you crunch them all together, why those four? Throughout the decades of research, they've all been researched individually. Throughout decades of research, they seem to predict the same things at about the same rate, right? So one question is, are they all the same thing? So you study them, you look for a thing called discriminant validity, and you go, no, actually, they're predicting some different things, but there's this common core between them, right? What is that? So that's what we started modeling and came up with this idea: positive psychological capital. Yeah, and it relates to a lot of stuff, and it can be developed. We did a meta-analysis. Here's my shameless citation. Meta-analysis on this a while ago. It's pretty popular still. 51 studies, just over 12,000 employees all together, and PsychCap relates to all kinds of stuff. Performance, job satisfaction, organizational commitment. It has a negative correlation with like cynicism, turnover, intention, stuff like that. So in sum, if you can develop psychological capital in your employees, efficacy, hope, resilience, and optimism, they're going to be better off. You're going to be better off as a manager, and your firm is going to be better off. That's the big idea. Let's look at the last two here really quick, then we'll wrap up Chapter 7, subjective well-being. All I really want you to know about this is there's some cool research on it. It's sort of like happiness, positive affect, and it predicts things in the workplace. It predicts relationships. It predicts job satisfaction. It probably predicts all kinds of satisfaction. People that are just kind of content and happy. The last one here is emotional intelligence. I'll just make a comment on it just so we know kind of what it's about. Emotional intelligence is weird. It's been ripped on in the scientific community because it's not really an intelligence. There probably are multiple intelligences, but the measurement of it is sort of suspect. But it's one of those things where, like, once it's explained, you just go, yeah, there's some people get it. Some people can read a room emotionally, and some people are just, they're emotionally dumb. They don't understand, hey, you're talking and no one cares. You should shut up. Or when we were all talking and you walked up and we all stopped talking, you should take that as a sign that you're probably not wanted here. Some people can see that. Some people can't. It's difficult to manage, but here are at least 5 components of it. Self-management, managing your own self and your emotions. Self-awareness, knowing how you're seen, right? Self-motivation, empathy, and just generalized social skills. So all those things together, although subjective well-being and emotional intelligence are not part of positive psychological capital, they are positive psychology constructs that are used and studied in terms of organizational behavior. So, fun chapter.